Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And firstly, and most importantly, a very, very happy World Otter Day to you all. Um, I know we have attendees from all over the world, and for that, we thank you for joining us and choosing to celebrate World Otter Day with IOSF and on our webinar today. We're just at 9 o'clock here in Scotland, so we're very much at the start of our World Otter Day experience and fun. We know we have people from all over the world, so for those in Asia, I hope you've enjoyed your World Otter Day so far. And for those across our friends from across the Atlantic, you will be either not in World Otter Day quite yet, or you will be in the very early hours of World Otter Day. So thank you for joining us. We are absolutely delighted to have four amazing speakers here today for our World Otter Day webinar morning session, and then a further four in the afternoon, which we are equally delighted by. We are also delighted to have over 274 people have signed up for the webinar today across the two sessions in 42 different countries, which really shows that this is a World Otter Day event and a World Otter Day webinar. And we're also delighted to be joined by four speakers talking on some very different topics from different countries, different areas, different habitats, but all people that are passionate about otters and helping otters in their respective areas. Where I'm just having a quick flick through the attendees to say hello to people. Sorry if I miss anyone out. It's great to have Grace and Polly Oxen of IOSF here. Marlene Thomas, welcome back. Had the pleasure of meeting Marlene on a couple of occasions over the last 6 or 7 months. We've got Jane Kirkwood and Elodie Ray again. I believe you've been here over the last few years. Apologies if I missed anyone out. Just wanted to say a quick hi to a few people. So, welcome to the webinar, and hope you enjoy the four speakers that we have over the next sort of couple of hours. As many of you know, IOSF launched World Otter Day now 10 years ago. So we are in our 10th anniversary, and we have tried to make, as we do every year, this year the biggest and the best, and most importantly, the celebrating otters and putting them on the map and helping conservation be understood and helping more conservation work being done around the world. Throughout the years, as I've said, it's kind of grown bigger and better, and this year is no different. We have events in 50 countries at last count. It might be slightly more, including Malaysia, Tanzania, Costa Rica, and Mexico, and across every single continent bar Antarctica. So it's so good to see all these events happening all over the world, um, and basically helping promote otter conservation and promoting everyone's love of otters. Now to the housekeeping bit of the webinar. We are in the Zoom webinar format today, which basically means the only people that can share the video and can talk are the four speakers and myself. So if you do have any questions, and please feel free to throw as many questions as you want to myself or the four speakers, for the four amazing speakers we have. Please use the question and answer boxes or the chat box at the bottom. I can then relay any questions to the speakers, who I'm sure will be more than happy to answer accordingly. If you have any questions for certain individuals, you might want to say that, or just give your questions after the talks. At the end of the four speeches and presentations, we will have time for kind of wrapping up and any further questions that people might have. But like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Today's session, for the morning session of the World Otter Day webinar, we are delighted to have four new speakers. Over the last 4 years, we've had 10 speakers, 40 speakers, 40 amazing speakers, and they're no different today, where we are joined by 8 new speakers on various topics. Some very positive, some maybe not so, but equally important for you guys to understand. They're going to share their knowledge, their experience, and more importantly, their enthusiasm with us all today on different topics. And this morning's session will be offered presentations from the following. Over the last sort of 6 or 7 months, I have had the pleasure of meeting 3 of the 4 speakers. Graham, Ferdi, and Andreas were at the IOSF Eurasian Otter Conference in Colchester, England in November, and it was brilliant to meet them. 3 very passionate otter enthusiasts and 3 very nice people. So we are delighted to have them, and hopefully in time, Swanand, I can also meet yourself. So the four speakers we have today are Graham Roberts, who will be talking on the otters on the Greek island. We have Swanand Patil, who has created a beautiful video called Between Tides and Tracks, a fight to save India's coastal otters. We have Ferdi Andeska, who's going to talk about otters in Indonesia and the work of Berang, Indonesia. And we have Andreas Kranz, who is going to talk on the concerns for Austrian otters. So, without further ado, I think it's best to stop listening to myself and hand you over to the four experts that we have today. If you have, like I said, if you do have any questions, even during their presentation, and you want to put them into the question and answers or the chat box, please feel free, and I will ask them at the end. But firstly, we are going to have Graham Roberts, and I'll give a little introduction to Graham and the great work that he's done throughout the years. And as I said, he will be talking on otters on the Greek islands. So Graham Roberts has been dedicated to studying otters since 1976, when he began a baseline survey across southeast England, Kent, Sussex, Hampshire, and the Isle of Wight. With over 20 years working on otters and river projects with the Wildlife Trust, plus many years on the National Otter Steering Group, Graham brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. He's also contributed to national otter surveys for more than 25 years. Graham, thank you very much for joining us on this surprisingly sunny day in the Skye, and I will hand over to yourself for your presentation on otters on the Greek islands. Hi, Graham. I think you're on mute at the moment.
Right, I'm there. Now I go on to share.
Yeah, you go on to share and then just click your presentation. If you could pop your video on as well, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Funny enough, it's disappeared from the screen again, Ben.
So if you click share, is your presentation open on your computer?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
So
let me just do that.
if you click share, it should appear on the screen and you should just be able to.
Okay, let me just do that now.
Yeah, no problem.
Share there. Message. Share. Send. Oh gosh. So
Are
I've
you on
gone.
are you on the Zoom application itself?
I'm on the Zoom application. Hang on, let me just go back to that.
Yeah, if you go on Zoom and then click share at the bottom, there's a small square with an arrow on it.
Yeah, that's come up, and it hasn't come up on the screen, Ben. It did earlier on, and why hasn't that happened?
I'm not entirely sure. So if you can you click share and then click screen at the top, and then you should be able to just go back onto your presentation. Is it not open?
It's definitely open, my presentation, and I'll go to share on that, and I just click share on my presentation,
If you click share on the Zoom format rather
and it
than
says anyone with a link can edit. Is that what I want to go to?
no, sorry, if you go onto Zoom itself and click share at the bottom.
Oh God, I do apologise, everybody.
It's okay. No problem at all.
Um, um, right, desktop, and oh gosh, it's just.
So if you're on the Zoom itself and you click share.
Yeah, I'm just. I've got quick share there, and I've got it on there. Let me just put cancel there. I've gone on to share, and
It's not there.
it's not there. Let
Would
me
you
just.
would
What
you
did
like
I
me
do?
to share it, Graham, and you can just ask?
Yes, please. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
I'll
do
do
that.
that, and then you can just ask when you need your
Okay.
slides changed. No problem at all. Just waiting for it to load, and then I will go slideshow. Okay, Graham, you should be able to see that, and I can change when you ask me to.
Okay, that's terrific.
Thanks, Graham.
Okay. All right, we're all ready. Okay, good morning, everybody. Sorry for that delay, and just a big thank you to Ben for all the work that goes into organising today. And I see that Grace is one of the participants, and Ben and Grace have been what I consider the absolute champions for otters. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Okay. Right, next slide, please. Right, I'm going to talk to you about Greek otters on the Greek islands. And really one sort of the question one should be asking is, did a lot of people don't even know that there were otters on the Greek islands, and indeed what future might or might they not have? And so that was the question I was asking myself. And so just briefly, these are the 4 categories I'll be covering in my talk. Okay, thank you. And it started in 2019, was when I was on a holiday on the island of Corfu doing the Corfu Trail. And I couldn't help deviating. And anybody who works on otters cannot cross a river without showing interest that perhaps there might be otters around. And lo and behold, quite casually, unsurprising to me, I found an awful lot of otter signs during this 106-mile walk from north to south of Corfu. And I thought, well, when I get home, I really need to start looking into this, because clearly I'm not the only person that knows about this. Okay, next slide. And I found from the literature, and there wasn't an awful lot, there was one very important review that I saw, and it had some published data, particularly for the island of Corfu and for Evia, which is the 2nd largest island in the Greek archipelago, out of the 7,000 islands, I should add, which is off Athens. So the island of Evia is here. Is my cursor working on that, Ben?
No, but I've got it.
Okay, is Evia there? And you can see that there was a lot of published data for Corfu. There was a little bit for Evia, but the other was mostly for the other 3 islands. So in total, there were 6 islands that were highlighted that possibly had otter evidence, but there had been no conclusive overall survey of all the islands up to date for possibly over 20 years. So particularly the islands in the east, which were off Turkey, which is Lesvos, Chios and Samos, those have mostly all been anecdotal evidence, or the occasional otter that been recorded by a naturalist dead on the road or whatever. So that was the premise for my work. Okay. Thanks, Ben. And so I undertook between 2021 and 24 of systematic surveys, usually in April or May, and the reason I chose that time is the winters do have some rain. Some islands much more than others, particularly Corfu and Evia, have reasonably high rainfall. And obviously, if you're going to look for otters throughout their catchments on the islands, you want to be going when there's some water in them, because typical with lots of Mediterranean islands, unfortunately, lots of the rivers completely dry up and there's absolutely nothing from source to sea. So it was important to try and go when there was the best chance I could find some sort of level of distribution. I also used Corfu as my base for each of those trips. So with Corfu, I've now sort of done systematic surveys for 7 years. It's only recorded here within the context of this presentation, 21 to 24. But the conclusions which I will share with you about Corfu are quite interesting in their own right. Okay, so I covered 358 sites. Those are ones where I did the minimum. And then obviously you also cross a lot of other sites which I didn't tend to record because they were just too dry or that the water courses were just too insignificant. Okay. Standard survey methodology. All of you listening, I expect, are very aware of the work that was done by particularly Paul Shannon, Conroy, and all of those. So standard methodology, you go to a point site where you've got access to the river. And that is quite a challenge in itself in Greece because there aren't that many bridges. And where they are, they tend to be over very high gorges or very high, deep-sided banks. So access isn't always favourable from there. But then you obviously want to do a minimum of 600 metres if you find nothing. But sometimes where we did find, as soon as I found something, I didn't feel it necessary to continue to do the full 600 meters. Okay, thanks, Ben. And it is challenging, particularly on Evia and Corfu. The rivers, particularly the estuary areas and up for the tidal limits of them, tend to have been dredged out, and they're very deep, extremely deep. So you can either swim and get in the water. A couple of times I was helped with boats, which made it easier. But actually finding your way to try and find otter signs within dense giant reed, some people may refer that types of typha or phragmites or these wetlands, this vegetation is terribly impenetrable, and it's also very sharp. And so there is a health and safety thing. You have to be a little bit careful. It's also the home to lots of critters as well. So it's not easy to access some of these sites. I have to say, for many of the people listening today, you've got areas where you've got many more things to worry about, things like crocodiles and perhaps more dangerous things to be concerned. In Corfu, there is only a limited danger associated with this. Okay. And there is a variety of sites, as you would expect. So, as I was saying, very dense vegetation in the top left-hand corner, and then to the top right, quite small streams within extensive salt marsh systems where they still exist. Saline pools are quite a common feature on some of the Greek islands, and this was associated way back to the Venetians and the production of salt. And a lot of these have now long been since neglected and become quite important wetlands in their own right. And then in some of the more mountainous regions, you've got quite significant rivers, very much perennial rivers. They don't necessarily flow all the year, but they're quite significant and they're powerful. And that they in very deep gorges, which can be very challenging to get down to. You know, you can talk going down 300 to 400 meters easily on almost slippery, steep slopes. So some caution is required in trying to access some of these areas. Okay, thanks, Ben. The best way, obviously, wherever possible with rivers, and particularly upland areas where they tend not to have very much pollution, is to get in the river itself. And, you know, with sensible shoes and take a stick with you, you can actually navigate into the headwaters of some of the rivers. And that is much easier than clambering through the vegetation or putting yourself on the steep gorge sides. And getting in the river is always the very best way. A real comparison that I noticed right at the beginning, though, that otter sprinting activity in Greece on the islands. Now, whether this represents less otters, I'm not 100% sure, but they do tend not to sprint regularly. So they're very spaced out. So you often have to walk, and often if I was in a good area, I had to go further than 600 meters. Sometimes it was 1,000, sometimes longer, because I was determined that if there's going to be otters here, this is where I'm going to find them. And sometimes it really did pay off. So you can't always necessarily go by textbook. I think you have to take it by the types of areas you're surveying at the time. Okay, thank you. The only cautionary thing in Greece, and it varies on each island, between 7 and 9 species of snake. All the islands do have 2 species of poisonous snakes, and unfortunately they often are near the rivers, and they particularly are under culverts and bridges. And vipers, I counted a lot in the island of Evia. This snake on the left is like a lizard snake almost, and there's whip snakes that actually are quite large, 3 to 4 meters. And they can startle you. I think 99% of snakes want to get away from you. I think so. Caution is definitely needed. And in the water, you do get one poisonous water snake in the fresh water that you have to be a bit wary of. But normally in the clean water, you see these things very readily. And as always, snakes tend to move off on their own. Okay, thanks. The other thing you've got to be very careful about on anywhere in the world now is introduced species. And Greece has its real share of introduced species, and particularly the raccoon dog the raccoon moor and the coypu have become very widespread in certainly mainland Spain, Greece, and on some of the islands. And the coding there shows that the distribution. So we've got coypu now on 3 of the islands that I surveyed, raccoon dog only on 2, and the same with the raccoon itself. But the stone martin, which was introduced to some of the Mediterranean islands, is ubiquitous. It can be found on all the islands I surveyed in good numbers. Okay, thank you. And again, with identification, it's very easy for people surveying, particularly when you don't find very many signs. Your imagination can run away with you. If you find a footprint, you can almost think, well, the size is about right. It's by the river. It must be an otter. Be very cautious with that. I tend never to use footprints unless I get really, really clear footprints. And I like to try and find simultaneous spraint in the terms of otter to identify that, yes, it is definitely an otter here. The raccoon dog has, particularly on Corfu, very similar footprint to otter. The droppings are very different. The coypu in certain soft silts can actually look very ottery. The stone martin, even on certain estuaries near the sea, I found evidence of stone martin that, and I was with a surveyor from Greece, interestingly, and they said, oh, I think this is otter. I said, no, actually, it's not. This is actually definitely stone martin. So really important to distinguish what else there might be there. Okay, thank you, Ben. Now, the results for Corfu, and I base these just on the 2021 when I did the main part of Corfu, but is that I looked at in total 103 sites. And since that time, because I visited so many times, I expect I've actually visited over double that. But I've only recorded these because this was part of the systematic survey. And there was 34% were positive. In some ways disappointing because there's big areas that I think potentially should support otters that aren't. But some of the challenges that are facing Corfu, I'll be sharing with you in a minute, and you'll understand that. Corfu does have 4, however, Ramsar sites, Nature 2000 sites, which are significant wetlands, but those in their own right have challenges. And what I did find from the 7-year studies, that there's a huge variability of the distribution of the population. So it is moving quite extensively across the islands. If I was there during the winter, I would find that movement, I expect, quite extensive. That's the time they're mobile. And so being there, and I varied it from April, May and June, I have found a systematic variance of the distribution of them. Okay, thank you, Ben. Evia is a wonderful island. As I said earlier, it's the second biggest. This is a big island. It's got some very good road infrastructure, but to access some of the mountain roads and some of the river valleys is quite challenging. They're dirt roads, some of them, long journeys and long walks down to get to the water course. But I was very pleased, having sort of recorded 96 sites, that 41% were positive. And I think if I'd spent more time, I was in Evia over a month, I would have found a lot more, I think. I was very excited because it hadn't been covered properly before. And I did have a little bit of time afterwards to check the mainland near Athens itself, both north and south, going up the Evia Causeway, the Evia Strait that runs between mainland Greece and the island. And the crossing points are very numerous. It's very near to the mainland. And so there certainly are otters still on parts of the mainland there, which will readily cross. You know, you've even got a causeway that's joining the island. So connection with Greece, the mainland and the island. And this is going to be hopefully a salvation for keeping otters on this island. Okay, Ben, next one. Lesvos was, I think, my biggest disappointment because it's got a lot of recognised Nature 2000. Of all the Greek islands, it has a real sense of responsibility for nature. And it's quite a well-known destination in Europe for bird watchers and particularly birds on migration. And it's got some stunning wetlands, both freshwater, saline and saltwater lagoons. And they're recognized in lots of different ways. And I was very disappointed not to have found them. It's the nearest point to Turkey is 12 kilometers. So if you take the textbook stuff, that's very much on the periphery of an otter's migration from a mainland population to an island. But in Greece, what I've noticed is that the weather, when you get a substantial high, the river or the sea becomes like glass. And I think otters could actually travel double that distance if need be. And certainly between Lesvos and Turkey, and indeed, well, all the islands really, there are often small little reefs and things. So I think an otter swimming across in ideal conditions and calm could easily get onto the islands. The most recent recordings, and why I was there, I was staying in a farm, and the farmer was very interested in what I was doing, and he actually told me that there had been very recently 2 dead otters found here on the coastal bit of the Gulf of Killarney on Lesvos. But the crossing points are further north, but there's plenty of wetland for them to transfer across in the winter. Okay, thank you, Ben. And Chios, unfortunately, no evidence at all. There had been anecdotal here. This one perhaps could expect. It's the nearest point to Turkey. And there's an island in between as well. So it's an easy, and there's a sort of remnant marsh here. And I think that's just been an anecdotal crossing and otters come across. But in my opinion, these rivers are too small. There's not enough quality habitat to sustain an otter population, certainly on this island. Okay. And the same, I'm afraid, goes for Samos. The one excellent wetland is at the nearest point of Turkey, and this is where nearest point to where any otter activity has ever been recorded. You're terribly close here, sort of 3 kilometers across, and otters could come from Turkey, but this wetland itself is under great pressure. It's next to a military site, and beyond that, where do the otters go? The other wetlands that are well distributed right round the island are all perennial streams, only really function in the summer. Okay. And the last island is Lefkada, and we did find some positive signs there, and not surprising because the whole north of Lefkada, where the causeway is marked, Ben, if you could cursor that, is attached to mainland Greece, and there's quite a few Nature 2000 sites within an otter's range easily from the mainland, where I have subsequently been back and found good otter evidence. But the evidence of Lefkada itself, again, because of the shortage of water around the island and the not large enough catchments to sustain a population, is all associated with the saline lagoons, part of the Nature 2000 site in the north. Okay, moving on. And unfortunately, Lefkada has recently put in a new road onto the swing bridge. So it's a direct access to the island because it's become so popular. And even while I was there, which was so sad, I think I sent it to Grace and Ben, I actually recorded a dead otter, a female otter on the road. And I've got somebody now there monitoring, and we've had 4 otter deaths there in 16 months. Trying to feed the island into the wonderful lagoons, but clearly a pressure point that perhaps at some point needs to be looked at. Okay. And the impacts of climate change are really showing. Inclement weather extremes, really. There have been some unusual floods, but mostly associated in the winter months. But this is a Ramsar and a Nature 2000 site. The water table here has dropped over the last 5 years between 3 and 4 meters. This was a world-class wetland for birds, and it's now 99% of the time dried out. I did find signs in the remnant part of the marsh here, but just showing how it's sort of shifting. Okay. Thanks, Ben. And abstraction. All the Greek islands are popular as tourist resorts, and unfortunately, I don't know how quite the Greek authorities look at their water balancing, how much resource actually is there, equates to how much abstraction is allowed. And it seems to be very random, very willy-nilly. And wherever you go, there's, whether they're legal or illegal, abstractions going into the tiniest of ditches and obviously into precious groundwater and reducing the water levels. So often a huge proportion of the rivers are completely dry. Okay. And fires have been a real ravage for Greece. You may have seen the publicity on it over the last few years. In 21, 50,000 acres just on Evia, that's a third of the island. That equates to 125,000 acres in old money of prime forest was burnt in the north, associated with many of the wonderful river valleys, which has completely exposed them. And over the last 10 years in Greece, over 1 million acres of prime forest, often containing the headwaters of the perennial rivers, has been destroyed. This is going to take a long, long time to recover, if ever. And if the trends of global heating are going to continue, it was not unusual to have temperatures, even while I was in Evia, that were 45 degrees. It was very excessive and quite, you could only do work safely early morning or late afternoon, evening. Okay, thanks, Ben. And you need this forest to shade these upper rivers, to keep the water in it, to keep it cold. And moving on, Ben. And the important thing is there's a lot of the perennial rivers also have a lot of lakes. With the landscape and the geology, you get deep pools that often stay wet if there's forest covering them. And within these pools, you find quite a lot of available food. And certainly in the otter spraints I was looking at, I found lots of freshwater crab. Now, if these pools dry up because there's no shading, then that's going to reduce the availability of habitat for otters in the summer months. Okay. And degradation and conflicts of interest. The wetland sites in Greece, the Nature 2000 sites, there's quite a few. World Wildlife Fund have done some good audit work on all of this. But sadly, these sites have massive conflicts of interest. You know, in Britain now, if we have protected sites, at least we can kick up. In Greece, it's not looked upon very favorably if you try and alter some of the vested interests that are associated with these wetlands. And this is right by the airport in Corfu. This is a fish farm operates in here. They have chutes, they abstract, and obviously this is the runway here of the motorway. This is a Nature 2000 site. Moving on, Ben. And this is also that site. So this is one of the rivers that feeds into it, absolutely full of pollution coming from the town, dead fish, detritus of all manner of things. But I still found otter signs there. So they're just about using it. But one sort of thinks with attrition, this is the beginning of the end, really, for a very important site like this. Okay. And also increasing, Greek always prided itself on local food and stuff was very much organic. Again, the demands of tourism are changing that, and hydroponics and polytunnels and nutrient feeding, nitrates and things to organic food is happening at quite a stark rate. And consequently, any watercourse associated with it, with the discharge from these places, there's a lot of evidence of nutrient enrichment, particularly as the water levels drop off and the summer months come. And this is obviously reducing the productivity of food. Okay, thank you, Ben. And fish farms, an increasing thing. The Mediterranean has been totally overfished and fish farms are springing up everywhere and worryingly often in Nature 2000 sites. So active commercial fish farms operating in these protected sites. Okay. And trapping, I found lots of evidence of trapping and persecution. One hopes it is only the targeted species like the raccoon dogs, and koipu. But otters, as we all know, can get caught in traps. And I found lots of abandoned traps, which is disappointing. Okay. Something less obvious to people is two things, fly tipping and feral dogs. Evia has lots of packs of wild dogs, and I was surveying up in the mountains and had a nasty experience with a big pack of hounds that are running rampant in the river valleys. And we all know that dogs are very susceptible, otters are very susceptible to disturbance by dogs. And these are large dogs. And I think, I was nervous enough to be near them, but less a lot. It is an issue, and it's an issue that I think could be easily addressed. And I'm surprised that the Greeks aren't doing more about it. Okay. And rubbish. Plastic is perhaps the scourge of the 21st century. And my God, all the Greek islands are suffering now from excessive. This is by a tourist waterfall on one of the islands, and tons and tons of detritus from fly tipping and just from general rubbish from tourists is finding its way into these very precious watercourses. Okay, thanks, Ben. I'm nearly there. And unfortunately, with EU money, they've done a lot of upgrading of roads, and I don't deny that they need to do that. But unfortunately, they're often sourcing the gravels and the very necessary resources from the river valleys and completely reprofiling a whole river system. So taking out all those important wetland areas, which then become permanently dry most of the year. So there's no migratory fish can challenge to get up through areas like this. So it's changing the dynamic of the water system quite dramatically. Okay. And I just want to thank these people who I've met on my travels in Greece, who've been absolutely superb in getting me access and helping and facilitating, just building a picture of what's going on. The middle lady, bless her, Zena, she's now living in Crete. And interestingly, there was once supposedly a subspecies of otter on the island of Crete. It would be a fascinating to study. I think it's disappeared 400 or 500 years ago, but there was, they think, a subspecies living independently on that island. So conditions have changed a lot. Okay, Ben, thank you. And the last one, just to thank these three wonderful people, Paul, Grace, and Ben. You won't like me saying this, but this wouldn't happen without you. And I want to thank you for that. You paid my airfares for 2 of my trips to Lesvos and Chios. I was very grateful for that at the time. The rest of it, I've sold all the family furniture, so I've enjoyed doing it. And I hope I'm going to start fully writing it up, Grace, so you will have that report, I hope, by the end of this year. So thank you very much all for listening.
Thank you very much, Graham. That was fascinating and really interesting to hear. Do you mind popping on your video? Just while we have
I'll put this on.
that'd be fantastic. One thing I took away from it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like the 3 islands, Corfu, Lefkada, and Evia, correct me if I'm wrong, that are closer to Albania, Greece, have healthier populations than the 3 islands that are closer to Turkey. Could hypothetically you say that potentially populations on mainland Albania, Greece are maybe healthier than the populations in that part of Turkey, and that's maybe what's helping the islands themselves?
Yeah, indeed. It's a very good question, because I would love to now go back and start looking at Turkey. At the moment, I've got a friend ecologist working in Turkey, and they're not being welcomed very easily. I felt totally safe in Greece. But in Turkey, people don't like people doing things. And I think you have to be a little bit careful. Interestingly, I'm working on river work in the southwest of Britain. And there's somebody who spends 6 months of the year in Turkey, and they are opposite Samos, and they're going to try and survey the rivers there for me this year to see if there's anything there. Some of the reports that Grace has shared with me from Turkey, and I get from academia, it's sparse information. It's
Yeah,
not systematic survey. It might be one catchment and they've looked at half a dozen sites. I think it would be really useful to find somebody who perhaps would be brave enough to do an all survey of Turkey, and
yeah,
then we
absolutely.
could assess how easy it is. But I think it's a really good question.
Yeah, and just side note, if anyone has any questions for Graham, just pop them in the chat box and I'll ask him them. The other thing it was interesting you talked about wild dogs. We've done work in other countries and it's been similar. I remember in Mexico they were saying similar sort of situation where the dogs would become packs, probably as they're meant to be if they were actually properly wild.
Yes.
Um, but also you mentioned quite a lot about tourism being an issue, and you'd imagine as these dog packs grow and potentially become more wild and more aggressive, it will have an impact on tourism. So you'd imagine the governments of these islands will want to do it for the tourists, not necessarily for the otters, and try and reduce that. And then hopefully in time it will help the otters.
I hope that will happen. It's very difficult to fathom out. It, the Greeks are so delightful. They have a very different slant on life than perhaps that we do live in Britain. But I personally don't think they treat their animals very well. There's a lot of abandoned dogs. Some of the islands are overrun with cats that must be having a massive impact on amphibians and small mammal and birds, particularly. Um, but Lesbos was just very different. The whole culture there, because they've seen the value of the tourism that natural history has brought. And it's something that we were talking with the people on Corfu, particularly. They've got these gems of wetlands, and there's one coastal walk in the northeast that is opposite Albania that is totally stunning. It's a world class walk. And and they're talking of putting marinas in there, and this will kill the golden goose. And
Yeah,
it's trying, but these countries want money, but rather than develop the existing infrastructure, there's a lot of abandoned hotels, and certainly since
hmm,
COVID, there's a lot of abandoned buildings. These could be repurposed, and that's how I'd like to see the tourist industry go. But the tourist industry does not integrate with the environment, my understanding, and most of it's devolved through Athens now. They've taken a lot of power away from the local islands, and then they give them a capitation according to how well they behave. So
yeah,
I think it's a cultural thing. And if we were part of the EU still, it would be perhaps an easier journey. I think it's
yeah,
going to be a much harder one for us to influence that. It's got to
yeah.
come from within Greece itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
There's a few questions on the chat box. Swanand, who will be is one of the panelists today, says, "You said that the rivers dry out completely from source to sea. So do they still occasionally use the drier rivers or not? And also, is there a seasonal migration?"
Yes, there is. What would on the north of Corfu, which is more wooded, although again that's had fires in the last 2 years, severe fires. There's still some springs, which where the monasteries were and things, and the rivers were tiny. And a colleague has put up camera traps, and we actually got images of otters living in perhaps just 1 kilometre of headwater stream. Now, a lot of diverse food available, in particularly snakes and amphibians, and obviously crabs where they existed. So there is a real importance to not ignore these upland areas.
Hmm.
And they're difficult to exploit because you can't get infrastructure in easily. You can't get electrical pipes or any facilities. So they are vulnerable. But with climate change, I think the seasonality of it and certainly the propensity of fires is going to be a challenge. And Corfu had a serious fire on one of those very headwaters that was so good, and I haven't been back there yet. I hope to go later this year and see if there's been any impact there.
Yeah. Andreas had a statement. He said, "I think all the roadkills next to the Turkish mainland indicate that otters are there and dispersing onto the islands."
Right.
Then Lottie, excuse my
Thank
pronunciation,
you, Andreas.
she said, "Are studies also being conducted into the water quality of the islands and the health of the otters because of pollution?"
Yes, there is. World Wildlife Fund commissioned a massive thing for all the Greek islands, and it was a wonderful document. And it went to Athens, and there's been very little action on it. And it was literally sort of highlighting those very things I said about water balance. You know, what is the resource? How much can we cope for? How do we accommodate the tourist industry and that all year round? and and it's very challenging. And sometimes these things don't change until something disastrous happens. And water quality is definitely deteriorating. There is local small groups, but they're more or less individual charities that are desperately trying to constantly bring the attention of this. It needs really the Water Framework Directive surely should be operating in Greece just as it was here before we left. It should be demanding much better attention to their water.
Yeah, definitely. I'll do a couple more questions and then I'll pass over to our next speaker. What sort of conservation efforts do you see in Greece, and is there a prominent conservation effort in the country?
I think the big universities have got some very good academics now, desperately trying to do work. Um, there's one very impressive individual on Corfu, Giannis, who is basically involved in forestry, but he just has got fingers in all sorts of conservation pots on Corfu, desperately trying all the time. But as I say, because it has to go through Athens, it's not seen as the priority, and
Yeah,
it's short term gain rather than long term environmental benefit, unfortunately.
yeah. Final question for you, Graham. William Ngomo, who is a fantastic otter worker in Tanzania, he's asked, have you seen any trend in terms of increase, decrease over the years you've been doing it?
Right, I think I've been pleasantly surprised that they're doing okay on Corfu. It would be lovely to. I'd like to go back and do Evia again, and I'd like to spend longer. I think Evia could have a really important sustainable population. What you have to put this in the context, if there are actually only otters on 3 islands in the Mediterranean, sustainable populations, and bear in mind Greece has 7,000 islands, it's rather testament that perhaps they're not going to survive there.
Yeah,
Ultimately, I think that it's going to be challenging. And should we put effort into try and sustaining the populations on the mainland? Because certainly areas like the Pindos have still got some very good rivers, and in northern Greece, and there's some good forest still areas there, and really concentrate effort on protecting that as a biosphere reserve, really.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Graham, thank you so much. There is another question which I'll come to at the end if you're happy to
Yep.
think about. But for now, I will say again, thank you. Amazing, amazing presentation. And I'm going to pass over to our next speaker.
Thanks so much, Ben, and thanks everybody.
Thank you, Graham. Our next speaker is Andreas Kranz, who is going to talk on concerns for Austrian otters. Just to give an introduction to Andreas, Andreas has been dedicated to otter conservation since 1986, building decades of hand-on experience in the field. His academic journey includes both master's and doctoral research focused on these fascinating animals. His work spans a wide range of critical topics, from tracking otter populations and studying their diets to using genetic tools and telemetry to better understand their behaviour. Andreas has also played a key role in addressing human-otter conflict, helping to find practical, science-based solutions. With expertise in monitoring population expansion, estimating densities, and investigating road mortality, Andreas brings a deep and comprehensive perspective to otter conservation. Andreas, again, thank you for joining us, and I'll pass over to you for your presentation.
Hello, everybody. Hello from the Austrian Otters. Austria is a small country in the center of Europe, as you can see, and the otter is quite widespread nowadays in Europe. But it wasn't always like that. You see here the distribution in Austria in 1986. There were just small populations in the north and south east of the country, whereas in 2020 it's really widespread. So it means in 30 years we observed a natural recolonization from almost extinction to widespread. But the otter is perceived like overpopulated, both in fish farms and rivers and streams. Why? Economic damage, competition, considered like a pest, and also it's a scapegoat. Economic damage, yes, at fish farms, of course, and you may apply good methods, but you must be skilled and smart because the otter is also skilled and smart and may overcome your protection measures. Competition with river anglers. Yes, indeed. Otters love trout, any size, but they compete with the sizes when the trouts are 25 centimeters or larger with the anglers. Pest. Yes, emotions dominate. Imagine that you have an ornamental pond in your garden full of nice koi carp, and the otter is marauding this ornamental pond during the night. Or imagine to be an angler and you realize through electrofishing, as you see here on the right picture, a seriously wounded fish caught or wounded by the otter, or partly eaten carp lying on the riverbank. That makes people furious. Scapegoat, yes, of course. Fish may die for other reasons than otter. Then we have the climate change, which means water temperature is increasing, diseases are spreading, eutrophication may be a problem where it was not before. And we have serious habitat deteriorations in many places. What you see here, Austria with its provinces, and the red provinces are those where we have legal permits to kill otters. In 23, 101 otters were killed in Austria. The green is the provinces where otters are not allowed to be killed. You may ask now, why? Well, this question may be answered in two ways, from an ecological point of view and also from a legal point of view. I start with the legal one. Austria signed the Berne Convention in 1983, and since that, it was actually also before, but the otter is strictly protected by this convention. In 1995, we entered the European Union, and because of that, we have implemented the fauna-flora habitat directive. And in 2001, we also signed the Aarhus Convention for public participation in environmental matters. And it's based on three columns: access to information, participation of the public and NGOs, and access to terms. But in Austria, the point 2 and 3 is not properly implemented. And that's the reason why we have all these permits of killing otters. I showed you Austria with all these provinces, and I tell you now the story of Upper Austria as a good example. In 2000, we had the first request to kill otters in several districts. Well, the administration thought, we don't know, it's a strictly protected species, we have to do a proper study. So the proper study was done. I was actually doing it with my colleagues from Czech Republic. And the anglers' concerns was otters eat all the large trout. So we looked into the otter, but we looked also into the fish. And what we found with the fish was something very, very interesting. Fish grow, but they don't grow larger than 23 centimeters, despite that they are old. And that's because of oligotrophic streams with cleaning stations working nowadays, and fish didn't grow as much as in the years before. So the administration, because of this finding, said in 2003, the request to cull the otters, it's not possible. It has been rejected. However, the lobbying of the anglers, river anglers, continued, and the administration gave single permits in 2017 to 21. In total, 14 otters were killed. And such single permits are not so well announced to the public, so the NGOs got to know it a bit later, but they were able to successfully challenge these requests and they were stopped completely. So the administration thought about other ways. But in addition, they carried out a proper removal experiment from 2016 to 21, and I would like to show you this. It's in the same study area like 2000-2003 in the north of the country, oligotrophic highland streams. We have two removal stretches, one control stretch. Each of these stretches is 16 to 19 kilometers long, and surprisingly, otter killing was not limited in numbers. It was unlimited. Hunters could kill as many as they wanted in these areas over the period of 3 years. In addition, we did the genetic otter census to know how many otters are there in the beginning and afterward, after the culling, and we did annual fish population census. Here I show you now the result of the abundance of brown trout in one of these stretches. What you see, the green bars is the electrofishing abundance individuals per hectare in spring. The numbers are the years behind, so it starts with 2016 and ends with 21. And the red bars are the abundance of fish in electrofishing in autumn. And the yellow shows when the culling happened. So it happened from 2018 to 21. And in this period, 13 otters were killed. And you see how was the abundance of fish before in 16 and 17. Well, quite surprising, the autumn abundance really decreased, despite that we killed 13 otters. And what about the spring? It was nothing special. I mean, nobody would say that there is a significant increase or decrease of abundance in the spring. But let's have a look at the biomass, the same stretch. Biomass will be a better indicator for those fish which the anglers want, the big fish. So we have the biomass in kilogram per hectare, and again in spring and in autumn. And you see there is a slight increase in the period 18 to 21 in the green bars, but a slight one. And in autumn, there is actually, again, some kind of decrease, which means the situation is not really nice and favorable for the anglers, because despite of the killing of all the otters, the biomass went down. You have to know that the angling is going on from March to middle of September. So the results is the hypothesis after the winter, no fish is left in the angling in the right size for the anglers because of otter predation. It may be otter may contribute to this. But overall, in the removal of 11 to 13 otters in 3 years, caused no increase in trout biomass overall. And it became clear from the fish ecologists that trout are limited by other factors than the otter. So some kind of synthesis of that is otters do not threaten trout population structures, and otter removal did not alleviate or solve the problem, the competition with the anglers. So we continue with the story in Upper Austria. Despite of the findings which I explained you now, in 2022, they made a regulation simply because of the pressure of the anglers that something has to be done and the otter is the problem. And when we have such a regulation, NGOs cannot complain against such a regulation because the Aarhus Convention is not properly implemented. So we have now a culling permit from the year 22 to 28. They call it temporary exemption from all closed season for otters, and the annual quota is 64 individuals. So those who are now outside from European Union, this will be a bit strange, but we have this fauna flora habitat directive, and for those of you who are inside Europe, you may understand it easily. This Article 16 gives permissions, regulates under which conditions you may cull such a strictly protected animal. And what they wrote in this regulation in Upper Austria, they simply copied the paragraph 1 and pasted it into the regulation, which means the aim of the culling of otters in Upper Austria is the prevention of serious damage, the protection of flora, fauna, other public interest for education and research, and because there are no alternatives and it's not detrimental for the favorable conservation status of the species in Austria or Upper Austria. Well, that's actually why we may kill 64 otters annually in Upper Austria. And I leave it to you to judge if this was the intention to make such regulations, if this is the intention of the Fauna Flora Habitat Directive with Article 16. Here you see now the picture with the other provinces. So we have Carinthia killing otters, Lower Austria, Upper Austria, Salzburg, and Styria. And these are the numbers which are recorded, and they still stay a bit under the quota. But they kill, of course, also lactating females. And lactating females means that they have dependent cubs, and if you kill such an otter, the cubs will die as well. So you don't kill just one, but you kill many more. And then the other is when you shoot at one otter, and otters are usually shot on the edge of the water, they may simply escape deadly wounded into the water, but the hunter will say, well, I didn't hit it properly, it escaped, I don't put it to the quota. And the otter is dead and the animal is gone. And one special case in Carinthia, they are allowed, not in the other provinces, but in Carinthia, they are allowed to use conibear traps. And this has also serious animal welfare issues, as you can see here on the right side. So the otters are caught underwater, they drown, but sometimes they are not properly caught, and then it will be really a problem for them. To sum up, in Austria, otters are food limited. Culling is not solving anything. Culling is a Sisyphus action. We have a silent conflict because this Aarhus Convention, is not properly implemented, and the NGOs have no good possibilities to interfere, like, for instance, in Germany, it would be the case. But we are working on finding a better way of coexistence than it is now. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Thank you for presenting on your rightful concerns over otters in Austria. Is one concern I have is obviously Austria's managing to cull otters being in the European Union, and there's definite concerns that other countries also see this blueprint for working their way around the rules, and then it becomes a bigger thing outside of Austria as well. So that's a concern. I don't know if it's a concern as well for others, but there's definitely a concern that it could become more outside Austria too. The other thing I was wondering is obviously there's concerns over trout populations, and that's probably where the culling begins and the reasons for the culling begins. But is there ever, going back to Graham's presentation as well, has there ever been work onto the water quality in Austria as potentially and more likely that's the reason that we are seeing reduced trout populations?
Well, It's of course that many of the rivers got cleaner, which means less food, less nutrition is inside. And that's why some of the rivers, like these oligotrophic granite and gneiss highland streams, have now not so favorable conditions for trout to grow. The other thing is that we all know and are aware and worried how the insects are going down. And when the insects are going down, this is very bad for the trout. But most of these pentos studies are quality in terms of quality, but not in terms of quantity. So they recognize that some key species, sensitive species, may disappear, but we have no proper methods to study the decline of these water insects. What I realized is, for instance, that the Cinclus, the dipper, is nowadays in some of the rivers which I'm monitoring for 30, 40 years, is much more rare than before, which is also some kind of indication that, yeah, that there is something going on with the insects.
Yeah, yeah, I
There are
agree.
many other things with the insultation, with a lot sediment brought in and things like that. And of course, they are all contributing to it, yes. And we
Absolutely.
see other countries, like, for instance, Switzerland, that fish are declining and there are no otters at all.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Maria Schmaltz has said, perhaps I didn't hear this in your talk, but what was the result of the genetic studies? How developed are the number of otters in the study area in Saint Moul?
Yeah. Okay. So the removal experiment and the genetics there showed, of course, a significant decrease of otters. So in the study areas where they were allowed to kill many otters, it was yeah, otters went down, but fish didn't increase.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Andreas, thank you very much. If anyone has any further questions for Andreas, then please put them in the boxes and we can ask him at the end. Thanks, Andreas, for your talk. Although it isn't a very positive talk, it's a really important one that we all know about. So thank you very much and really appreciate you joining us today. I will now hand over to our next presentation, which will actually be a video from Swanand Patil entitled Between Tides and Tracks, A Fight to Save India's Coastal Otters. Swanand, thank you so much for joining us and thank you for allowing us to share your video, which I'll do from my computer. Just to give an introduction to Swanand, Swanand is a wildlife researcher from India and the founder and director of Arcane Conservancy Trust, where he leads efforts in wildlife research and conservation. With an MSc in Wildlife Conservation Action, his work dives deep into the lives of otters, exploring their behaviour, habitat use, activity patterns. His research has included studies of the smooth-coated otter using camera traps to understand how environmental factors shape their daily lives. Currently, Swanand is researching Asian small-clawed otters in Goa, combining field surveys, camera trapping, and spatial analysis to uncover how these fascinating animals use their habitats and how we can better protect them. Through science and community engagement, he's helping drive conservation of freshwater and coastal ecosystems. Swanand, thank you so much. I'm just going to share your video. As with every other speaker, if anyone has any questions during or after, please pop them in the two boxes and I will ask.
Hey Ben, thank you so much.
Thanks, Swanand.
Life on this planet is very simple and complex at the same time. We live in a lap of mystic nature, made of all small elements which are fading day by day. How funny it is that each and every organism is related to other in every way possible. And for all, survival is the key to existence. In order to save ourselves, we need to save the planet. And for that, we need to save the nature. And that's where our conservation story starts. Hi, my name is Swanand Patil, and I am a wildlife biologist. My story began with conservation of one such element of nature called as wetlands, and that is when I came across otters. Smooth-coated otter, found in coastal wetlands, inhabiting rivers, marshes, and even paddy fields. They live around riverbanks and feed on slow-moving fishes. Otters are responsible for cleaning the river by hunting diseased and unfit fishes, and thus keeping the wetland ecosystem healthy and balanced. I somehow was curious about them, and I've been studying them very closely ever since. I founded Arcane Conservancy in 2021, and I have been working closely on otters and their habitat by scientific methodologies, via data collection, presence and absence, distribution, diet, and many more aspects of it. Doing transacts, sign surveys, camera trapping, scat collection, and other documentation in order to keep a track of the movement. During sign surveys, we rely on indirect signs such as cat, which is basically otter poop, grooming marks, which is rolling on sand, pug mark tail drags, and holds, which are basically otter dens. These signs are recorded with the help of GPS devices, where latitude and longitude are recorded. We are glad that a lot of our studies have been published in the known journals, and we continue to do so for identifying the gaps in otter conservation in various and multiple landscapes. Otters have been interacting with fishing communities on a day-to-day basis. Being opportunistic in nature, have been feeding from fishing nets, fish farming ponds, thus raising the animosity towards otters of locals. With ever-growing population, demand for commodities have increased significantly. The need for space, for infrastructure, has put pressure on wetlands. Dams have altered the natural flow of the rivers. Plastic waste, along with the industrial waste, is one of the major reasons for the degradation of wetlands. All these components have either damaged or destroyed wetlands, leaving a minimum breeding ground for various water-dependent species. We create awareness programs by showcasing otter ecology, habitat, and its importance in an ecosystem. We identify people's perception and work on creating events that will bring about a change in the way otters are perceived. We do awareness amongst all the stakeholders of the mission, starting with locals, who are the people residing with the otters. We try to understand their views on otters and try to aware them with the ecological importance of the species and wetlands, as without the support of locals, no conservation is undertaken. Secondly, we work in collaboration with Forest Department, who are perhaps the strongest emblem of conservation as policymakers and implementers, along with creating awareness, dealing with wildlife crimes and encroachment issues. We cautiously inform them on why this needs to be a priority of their action and support. We also do awareness program for school children with the help of teachers and other staff members in a fun way, so that we can bow the seed of wow in the minds of our future generation regarding these elusive species and their habitat and the nature itself. Arkin Conservancy has been closely working on building the bridge for security and support for the future by uniting the local communities, fishermen folks, Gram Panchayat members, and most important, Forest Department. Arkin Conservancy was built for long-term conservation of otters through active participation of stakeholders by enhancing capacity and promoting human-otter coexistence. It is a tough job exploring the mangroves. In the muddy terrain, the accessibility is rigid. There are many species like mugger and wild boar which can be a huge threat for the working biologist. Still, we believe in making a change because it starts with us, and we aim to work harder in order to make a bigger contribution to wildlife conservation. You can join the mission by supporting our work, by which you will be directly contributing to conservation research that will help protect these incredible creatures for the future. We do have evolved by killing animals for our survival, but now the tables have turned and we have to go the other way in order to save ourselves.
Thanks for the video, Swanand. There was a few people had issues with the video being jumpy, and I can only apologize for that. I'm not entirely sure why it was jumpy, but I have put the link in for the video, and it's absolutely worth watching. It's quite inspiring to hear Swanand's story, and why he's doing it and what he's doing. So if you do have 10 minutes spare, definitely watch it. Hopefully you got to hear him speak, and I've got a couple of questions. And if you did and do have any questions, then please share them. Swanand, one thing I really want to take away from it, the one sentence you said that I find really important. I can't remember exactly what you said, but basically you said that we need communities on board with conservation work, and you do a lot of work with older stakeholders in communities and also with kids. And I think that for me anyway, obviously I work largely in education, so I'm a little bit biased, but I think that's the most important thing. If communities are on board helping protect their otters, their environment, their wetlands, it will be much easier. If they're not interested, then what we're doing is almost impossible. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I completely agree with your statement as well. That's why our priority of our work is not just research, but also working with communities. It's kids, school kids, or college ones, or Gram Panchayat or Panchayats, basically the local administrative systems or even police or forest departments for that matter.
Yeah.
So yes, they are important, and it doesn't matter how much research you do. At the end of the day, if you want to make a difference, you have to get those communities on board. Without them, it's very difficult to even propose a research plan in that area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like we can't be in every community and saving. So if they can do it themselves, or they
Yeah, yeah.
at least help. And how have you found working alongside communities? Have they been quite positive towards your work with otters, or are you finding a lot of conflict at the same time?
Uh, it's a mixed place. There are people, or there are fishermen, I would rather say, who tend to say that because otters are there, that's why we get fish. But there are certain communities of fishing communities who say otters should not be there, so we can get more fish from the
Yeah,
harvest. So
yeah,
yeah, it is a bit tricky, but yeah, we do get mixed responses. Even kids, there are kids who have been living in that village, who have been dependent on that river for quite some time, but they haven't seen otters because their parents have seen otters, but they haven't. So their reaction to an otter is different, whereas their parents' reaction is very different,
yeah.
right? So yeah, you get a mixed reaction. Depends
And do you,
on
and do you
depends
find that
on
when you're
yeah.
working with the people potentially with a negative reaction, can you turn their negative perception into a slightly more positive one, or is it quite difficult?
It is difficult, I would say, because if that individual will comes from, let's say, a younger age, then changing their mind is slightly easier. But
Yeah,
whereas an adult who has spent, let's say, 50, 60 years in that area, changing their mind is slightly difficult because they have seen otters doing different things. I mean, they have been bitten by otters, so they have negative reactions or animosity towards them. But there are someone who have seen quite a lot of otters playing and wrestling around, so they appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, there are people who have been poaching otters as well. So
yeah,
yeah, so that happens as well. So the reaction is mixed. They do change the reaction once they see the camera trap videos. That is what I've observed. So
yeah,
if they see an otter, playing in the camera trap, then the
yeah,
reaction is completely different. And I
yeah,
have seen the change happen, but it has taken some time. Yeah.
yeah. That makes sense. There's a couple of questions for you. Where William Ngomo has said, "Thank you for the video that shows your hard work and passion for otters." But he wants to know, what would you say is the biggest challenge in your work?
Biggest challenge would be the terrain because I have worked in both landscape. One is mangrove and one is freshwaters, the rivers. The rivers are easier to walk around because you can walk through the rivers. These are perennial streams or smaller streams. So the maximum depth of water is up to knee height.
Yeah,
But whereas mangroves, the problem here is that you have a lot of crocodiles as well. It's not a problem, but it's a problem for a working individual. But somebody who is a wildlife person, then those crocodiles are good. But we do come across quite a lot of crocodiles and snakes and a lot of wild animals as well while doing the surveys. So that's one of the challenges. And other is accessing the terrain because not all these mangroves are connected, and the distance between the land and the river is quite high. I mean,
yeah.
it's in length. So it's a bit difficult terrain to work in. The most you can use is boats or a smaller boat, something like that, or you have to walk through the mangroves in those mangroves. So
And it
it
looks
becomes
quite
a bit challenging.
difficult
Yeah,
to
yeah,
walk across with the substrate underfoot. It's soft.
yeah, yeah. It's very
Uh,
soft. And
yeah,
also the seasonality, the high tide, the low tide, that is what you have to also calculate. So
yeah,
that also washes off the signs and all as well. So
yeah,
it's a bit difficult. Sometimes the survey becomes a bit biased, but yeah, it
yeah. That
can
makes
be.
sense.
Yeah, yeah.
An anonymous attendee has said, very interested in the issues with coastal otters. What has your research discovered about the spread of otters in your area?
With our research, I have in the past 4 years, I have seen that otters tend to migrate quite a lot if there is any problems with respect to forest being cut down or with respect to fishing in that area. But I have seen the general trend is that the family size is slightly increasing over the period years. So when I first started is when we had 2 otters or 3 otters maximum. But now the same family, I'm seeing 6 otters, 7 otters.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
there is a trend that these have been increasing, but those increasing trends are in packets or in pockets.
Yeah,
Other areas where otters were there, now they are not there. They have disappeared from that area. They must have migrated to some other area, but then that area there are less otters or no otters. So that
yeah,
itself is also worrying. So what changes has happened in that area is what also we are trying to understand
yeah,
in the
that makes
past. Yeah,
sense. And
yeah.
does that count for both species? Or are you too early in your Asian small clawed otter work to have seen any trends?
Asian small cloud, yes, there is too early to see any trends because we have recently started working on them.
Yeah,
But smooth coated, yes, there is significant trends.
okay.
And when it comes to small cloud otter, there is a lot of seasonal change in the season. So monsoons and then completely going to drier seasons. So then their distribution is heavily spread out. They tend to keep moving a lot in that area with respect to what. That's why I asked the question to, I think, Graham as well, if they are seasonally migrating in that area. Because in our case in India, they do tend to migrate quite a lot within the same landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, fantastic. We have one more comment rather than a question. Grace of
Yeah.
IOSF has said it'd be great to see team otter clubs in your area working with children. So maybe something me and you can have a little chat over and see if we can get something going.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic.
I'll
Well,
be
Swanand,
more than happy to, yeah.
brilliant.
More
Thank
than
you
happy
so
to, yeah.
much. And like I said, I know we had a few issues with the video. The link is on there, and I'll also send it in an email once after the event so people can watch it because it is well worth
Yeah.
it. It's a great video, and thank you so much for your
Thank
work.
you so much. Yes, thank you so much from IOSF as well to Ben and other guys as well for hosting this and giving us the platform as well. So
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
Swanand.
Thank
I
you.
will now pass over to our fourth and final speaker. Ferdi's another individual that I had the pleasure of meeting at the conference in November. Ferdi's passion for otters, sorry, can be shown by the fact that he travelled from Indonesia to the conference in Colchester and then travelled back. So he came over all the way from Indonesia just to be a part of the conference and a really important part. So Ferdi, thank you for making all that effort and then travel back to Indonesia. I've had the pleasure of not only meeting him but speaking to him on regular basis, and he is very passionate about otters. So a little introduction to Ferdi. So Ferdi Andeska is the founder and chairman of Yayasan Berang Indonesia, an organization focused on otter research and conservation efforts in Indonesia. He has been actively involved in otter research since 2015. During his academic years, Ferdi focused his research on the diet of the Asian small-clawed otter. In addition, he has been involved in various survey projects covering several species, including the lutra or Eurasian otter, the lutra sumatrana or the hairy-nosed otter, and the lutrigil perspicillata or the smooth-coated otter across different regions in Sumatra. Ferdi is a member of the Otter Youth Circle under the IUCN Otter Specialist Group, as well as part of the Indonesia Species Specialist Group. Currently, through Yayasan Berang Indonesia, he leads a range of education and conservation initiatives, including awareness programs in schools and environmental community groups across Sumatra. Ferdi, I will hand over to you. Thank you so much again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. I will check. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. There's just a window's come up saying this window is what your audience sees. Drag it to see. So you might need to click enter full screen mode.
Full screen. Okay, let's see.
That was a really warm introduction. You've set the stage well. And hey, going all the way from Indonesia to Colchester, that's some serious dedication.
Oh, what?
There you go. If you just tap that, we should be able to see it.
Sorry, I won't check. Okay. Thanks, Ben, for your introduce myself. First of all, thank you very much to IOSF for organizing this event. Thanks to Ben for inviting me to participate in this event. Hello everyone, my name is Ferdi Andeska. I'm from Indonesia. currently I work as director of the Berang Indonesia Foundation. Without taking too much time for introduce, I will go direct to what I would like to share to you, what we do in Indonesia. Like many
Is
of
it possible to make your screen full, Ferdi? Like we can see you're on camera, but it's not in the presentation mode.
Oh, sorry.
Just try share again.
Share.
That looks like your WhatsApp.
How about that? How about this? How about this?
I think you're on your WhatsApp currently.
Oh, sorry. So let's see. Ini dulu. Oh.
That's it. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, I will go directly to what I would like to share today, what we do in Indonesia. Like many other Southeast Asia countries, Indonesia is home to 4 otter species: Lutra, Lutra sumatrana, Lutrogal perspirata, and Onyx cinereus. These species are distributed across Indonesia, 3 major islands: Java, Sumatra, and Borneo. Especially for Onyx cinereus is also found on several small islands north of Sumatra, bordering Singapore and peninsular Malaysia. Since 2018, three otter species in Indonesia have been listed as protected species: Lutra sumatrana, Lutra, and Lutrogal perspicillata. Only Onyx cinereus is currently dead. Only otter species has not yet been protected by Indonesia government. In general, these are some of the major threats faced by otter in Indonesia. The first is habitat loss due to deforestation. According to BBC report in 2025, Indonesia lost 4,300 hectares of forest, and also environmental pollution caused by mining, agriculture, and settlement, which have damaged many rivers. And then hunting. Otters are hunting for the illegal pet trade. And also, I have received information about a community grown group in Jambi province that's capture otter only to take a stone-like object found inside the animal, which they believe has mystical powers. The first thing I will share about information about small claw otter. The Asian small claw otter is probably the most common species and the easiest for people to encounter in the wild. They can be found in Sumatra, Java, and Borneo. And several smaller islands. They occupy a wide range of habitat from mountain river to rice field landscape. Therefore, it is not surprising that they are the most accessible species for research. And then I have the video. Sorry. This video of Onyx cinereus in the river on the river close the mountain in forest. Here, several studies currently be still ongoing in Sumatra in paddy field landscape. These projects are under the supervision of Dr. Adrian. He was my professor, and also he Indonesian coordinator for IOSF and coordinator for small cow otter for otter specialist group. I worked with him for many years studying the small claw otter. In fact, both my undergraduate and master study focus on the ecology of small colored otter in rice field landscape. So what do we know about them? Sorry. Next. Okay. When we visiting the rice field, there are several signs that can help us identify the presence of otter. This is a footprint of a small colored otter. As you can see, the tracks are relatively small and do not show visible claw. Beside footprint, there are also the raised paddy field. The make like this is caused by small colored otter. This is one of the reason why many farmers dislike otter and consider them as a pets. And in addition, their faces or spine. As we know, otter faces or spine can easy be recognized because they contain remain of their prey. These are some of feature used by otter, as Latrin said, in the ricefield landscape. They include ricefield embankment, the base of tree, and the bridge underneath paths, and the corner of the around fish pond. One of my study focused on the diet small colored otter in the ricefield landscape. What I found different from previous study, early research showed that in their natural habitat, small colored otter mainly consume crustaceae and insect. You can see from the crude, horn, Kansas naka, and Abdul Patah. However, in the ricefield habitat, small colored otter prefer fish and mollusks as their primary prey. This is my study. Besides diet, we also study with environmental factor influence the diet of small colored otter. Environmental variables such as water level, average rainfall, temperature, and harvesting season were used as predictor. Interestingly, the main prey item, fish, was not influenced by any environmental factor because fish are always available from river and fish pond owned by local communities. Meanwhile, snail and mollusks were influenced by water level, while insect and frog were affected by temperature. And this several images of the remain of prey of otters, this part of insect and this part of fish, this part of mollusks, and then this part of crustaceae. This study also showed the water availability in ricefield, which determine the presence or absence of snail. It is an important factor influencing the occurrence of small colored otter in agricultural landscape. Therefore, heterogeneous ricefield landscape can provide prey resources for otter through the year. Next, regarding daily activity pattern, according to Hussein research, onyx scenarios living close to human activity tend to be crepuscular and nocturnal. This was also reflecting in our result camera trap, where small colored otter were active during the evening, night, early morning. This video for when the otter active in the night, and then this before early morning, and then this for during the day. Yeah. However, different result we found in population in living far from human activity. In this area, onyx scenarios are active through the day, although their high activity still occur at night. But Ferdi et al. Classify small colored otter is catamaran animal meaning they can be active at different times depending on environmental condition. Now, moving to the smooth-coated otter or Lutrogal perspicillata, the second most frequently encountered species in Indonesia. Based on the information I have received, they are commonly seen in large river and coastal area. I often receive video report from Borneo and most recently from the coastal area of Ujung Kulon National Park on the island of Java. Even so, research of this species remain very limited. The oldest study I found dates back to the 1990s, conducted by Reza Irwansyah Lubis in West Java, followed by Conservation Status Update Report in 2018. More recently, in 2025, these species were reported living symmetrical in peatland habitat together with Onyx cinereus and Lutra sumatrana. Next, Lutra. This species is probably encountered more often in Europe than Indonesia. In Indonesia, the first confirmed wild record of this species was only documented in 2023 by Verdana and colleagues. Because of this rarity, this species was even considered absent from Indonesia. Perhaps this was due historical misidentification. However, that assumption began to disappear once photo of this species started circulating on social media as pets being treated illegal. Then this video, first Lutra in Sumatrana, we have. Yeah, I'm very happy to have been involved in preparing the report for this species discovered in Sumatra. Next, Herinos Sumatra or Lutra sumatrana. The most threatened otter species in Indonesia. It was once considered extinct in the 1990s. Its distribution is now from Borneo and Sumatra. Report and study these species are also extremely rare. Long-term study were conducted in Southeast Sumatra in 2025 and 2013, and later in Petswam Forest of Southern Borneo in 2019. More recent report in 2023 and 2025 documented the species living sympatrical with other otter species. One record came from tropical river forest at elevation around 500 meters above sea level, while another was from pit swamp habitat. Since the species highly threatened, we urgently need more study to gather information about this population and ecology. We are therefore grateful that we are currently building commitment with several private sector partners to support research on this species in the pit swamp area of southern Sumatra. In the yellow area, this map represents the distribution of Lutra sumatrana based on the UCN research data, while the red area indicated new distribution record that we have successfully confirmed. We strongly believe that this species may actually occur across much of Sumatra Island. Therefore, further research is necessary to confirm its full distribution. However, conducting otter research in Indonesia is quite challenging. We also attempt to compile otter study from around the world to identify research gap in Indonesia and global. Out of 149 publications we collect after screening and selection based on relevance to conservation genetic, only 101 publications met the criteria for analysis. The review show the genetic study are still heavily dominated by Lutra, with total of 98 publications. Meanwhile, Onyx Nereus have only 10 publications. Lutrogel had 6 publications, and Lutra sumatrana was the least studied species with only 5 publications. Most interesting, among all these publications, Indonesia contributed only 1 genetic publication, despite being home all 4 Asian otter species. This clearly highlight the large research gap in otter genetics in Indonesia compared to other regions, especially Europe and East Asia. We identified several challenges and obstacles for conducting otter research in Indonesia. First, the challenging climate condition and difficult landscape. Research remote forests require significant cost and effort, including spending days in said forest. Survey along river also require constant awareness of weather condition, because sudden increase in water level can be dangerous. Rising water level may also damage camera trap and make it difficult to locate fresh latrine site. And then second, complex and multi-layer research regulation and bureaucracy. This was something I personally experienced in 2025. Much of my time was spent handling permit, my of which took a long time to be issued, disrupting research schedule. And then next, the abundance of other charismatic wildlife species causing otter to receive less conservation attention. Species such as tiger, orangutan, rhinos, elephants, hornbills, and primates receive far greatest conservation and research attention. The last, limit research facility and funding. Perhaps this challenge can be addressed through collaboration with multiple stakeholders. Because this challenging, we established an organization focused on otter research and conservation, namely is Berang Indonesia Foundation. Our mission is essentially to support strength otter research and conservation activity in Indonesia. These are some our members. They come from diverse background, including government, institution, NGO, academy. Since most of us also have other primary job. Currently, the most active member in the field are myself and Dr. Adrian, while the other mainly provide support behind the scene. Apart from research and field monitoring, we have also carried out several conservation outreach activity. One of them is World Otter Day. This first World Otter Day event in 2023 at Andeska University mark the yearly stake of building our organization. Then in 2024, we organized our second World Otter Day event. At the time, we received a World Otter Day grant from IOSF. The activity were conducted with school and children in Padang. We also conduct community outreach activity. Next, we also conduct educational activity for school children. Some of this we organize at Andalas University and the other school in Jambi province near Kerinci Seblat National Park in Sumatra. And also we conduct community outreach activity. For example, we discuss with rice farmer to explain the damage caused by otter in rice field is actually not severe, and that otter can help farmers by controlling pest smell. And then we also work with fish farmer to discuss the best and the most environmentally friendly way to prevent otter from preying on fish in the ponds. And then this video of area we conduct community outreach in Jambi province. We engage with community living along river bank. In some area, fishing regulation prohibit people from catching fish until every period of time. Some local residents become upset because otter hunt fish in this river. I try to explain that this a natural process because this river a part of the otter habitat and sex behavior cannot be prevented. Moreover, the fish taken by otter do not cause fish population in the river to disappear. This our second book for the support our education activity in the school. The book this book conducting about the point of view of small claw otter, how they condition in Indonesia, then tell Indonesia they're not alone. They have a friend like another species otter in Indonesia, Sumatrana, Lutra Sumatrana, Lutra, and Lutra galprespeculata. And then finally, we would like to express our deepest gratitude to IOSF because last year we were honored with the IOSF Otter Oscar Award. This award serves as proof that our work is appreciated during difficult times, especially when struggling to write proposal and secure funding. Receive this recognition truly renew our motivation and spirit. Thank you. I will back to Ben. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ferdi, and I'd like to reiterate and say thank you for the amazing work he does. Like I said at the start, I get to speak to him fairly often, and he's always out doing something with otters, which is fantastic. Anybody has any questions or comments for Ferdi, then please feel free to throw them out and I will ask them. Ferdi, one question I had was you mentioned with the small clawed otter, if you all pop your video on, that'd be great. You mentioned with the small clawed otter, the conflict with paddy fields. Would you say that's their biggest threat in Indonesia for the species?
No, no. I think this not the big the
Hi, Ferdi, you still there?
sorry, Ben.
It's not the biggest threat. The other question, we have a question from Ringa, who says, you talk about the existence of otters in paddy fields, and which is obviously a high number of human activity. I think there's possibly an increased potential of wildlife-human conflict. So do you have any advice and solutions from how to prevent the negative impact happening? Any solutions to the conflict between the small clawed otter and the rice paddies?
Yeah, I think for me this still difficult because sometimes we meet the farmer with with the level education for the farmers this low, so we need to more explain about how use what the function of otter in the paddy field. We explain they can they have a function to manage the environmental in the wetland paddy field landscape, and he also can be a predator to snail to reduce the snail in the paddy field. So he still have function in paddy field.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Actually, taking things out like snails that are going to eat the rice paddies is a good way to go about it and try and explain that they are actually helping. Jules Greff, who is a wildlife guide in the Amazon, has asked, have you ever have any information or studies on any cohabitation between otters and crocodiles?
So far, I still not met that condition, but from our location, uh, uh, we get information from the people there. He tell about they tell about in the river still exists crocodile there, but I never encounter live see live otter meet the crocodile in the field.
Okay, I might actually open that question out to Swanand as well. Obviously in a habitat. Swanand, have you ever had any or seen or heard of any interactions between the otters and crocodiles?
Yeah, actually, in our side, there is quite a lot of interactions between otters and crocodiles. Mostly, it is restricted to smooth-coated otters interacting with crocodiles. But then, I have personally seen otters attacking crocodiles from all the sides. So they group up on the crocodile and then they take bites, small nibbles on the crocodile, and then they chase away the crocodile as well.
Is
So
that,
yeah,
I think that's maybe to get the crocodile away from them so they feel safe? Is that the
yeah,
thing? Yeah,
probably, yeah,
yeah,
probably, yeah.
that makes sense. Thank you, Swanand. Ferdi, we have a question from Fergus Hebert. He has asked, how do you see the different Indonesian species of otters interacting with each other? Have you ever engaged in any sort of interaction between smooth-coated and Asian small-clawed otters, or because they're generally the ones that live in larger groups? But have you seen any cross-species interaction?
Yeah, I think we need the research, need more research about that, because we just confirm about they still exist in similar habitat, but we don't know how we interaction each other otter. Yes, in the future, I need to do more research about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, Swan, sorry, I'm gonna ask you as well because here in Europe we just have the one species, but I don't know if you in India have ever seen any sort of between the three species, you have any sort of interactions.
We do have interactions. There are recently, I mean, last year we discovered Eurasian otter living in Goa. Apparently, it was a road-killed individual, but I believe there are other individuals as well. So we have all three in one area. There are certain areas where smooth-coated and small-clawed have been living in that same area, but they tend to avoid each other in every way possible. They have different timings and they where they come to that same area, but then the timings don't really match. So we haven't come across any camera trap footage where smooth coated and small cloud both have interacted at the same time. They might be, but we haven't come across any such
Yeah,
um, yeah
that's interesting. It
instances.
was similar. We did a workshop in Malaysia 2022, if I remember correctly, and it was similar that they were coming to the same areas but at different times, the two species. So interesting, it's very similar in India too.
Yeah,
Um,
it is quite interesting. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. If anyone has any questions for any of the speakers or for myself, then feel free to use them. We'll use this kind of last time to catch up on some questions. So, Andreas, I think this question is for you. If you guys could just pop your cameras on, that'd be really great. But Andreas, they said, very interesting presentation. What sort of strategies do you think fisheries could employ to protect fish stocks safely for them and the otters?
Well, the question is about rivers or about fish ponds?
Fish ponds, I think.
For the fish ponds, you can do fencing in many cases, not in all cases. When the banks are very natural, then it doesn't make sense. It will not be waterproof. And then we have also some kind of fish ponds where the stream is actually going really inside like a stream and outside like a stream. So the otter will go through the water and you cannot fence it. It would not be waterproof. In such cases, uh, you can provide some incentives in terms of financial support for the people, and that's what is done in some provinces in Austria very successfully to calm the conflict. The people are happy with that. And otherwise, you can do the fencing, yes. And in the rivers, well, I think we have to work with the food, which means that we have to um, provide the otter some other food than the main target of the anglers. So, what is the main target of the anglers? The trout from a certain size. And the bigger is that size, the longer the trout has to grow. So we have, for instance, one case in Austria where they have the limit for taking the fish home is not 25 centimeters and bigger, but between 20 and 25. And such a simple mean may easily alleviate the problem. And we are working on this now to find if this could be adopted to other streams, but then think about other fish species like Cotus gobio, the bullhead, or um, Foxinus, small fish which are definitely not target fish for the anglers. And in many cases, these kind of fish are not in the streams anymore because they were partly eradicated by the anglers, like lota lota and or the chub, and partly they got extinct because of some flood happenings or things like that. And you could bring them back, and then the otter will definitely feed on these species which are easy to catch. Think about the bullhead, which is on the ground and a nice size for the otter. And then there is also the crayfish, which is a very attractive alternative food. So if we play with these things, provide the otter more than just the trout in the right size. I mean, the right size for the anglers. We could definitely make a big progress in reducing the competition and the conflict.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. And do you have, I know we have in the UK, the American crayfish. Is that the crayfish
Yes,
you're talking
yes,
of? So an invasive species that
yes.
the R does help to control as well.
Well, the American crayfish, I mean, it's a fantastic food for the otter. I think we should not look at it just like a very bad invasive species. I mean, in Austria, it's so widespread nowadays. In other countries, not so. If you're in another country and you have the chance to stop the spreading, it's good. But in Austria, it's anyway everywhere. And yeah, so it may really alleviate the problem.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Andreas. Just another question. I'm just going to try and work out who it's for. Otters being very territorial animals, I can hardly imagine interactions between different species. Already within the same species, as it can be seen in Singapore with smooth-coated otters, different packs are concurrential for the living territory. Could otters from different species be more friendly to one another? Uh, um, I don't know, Swanand, maybe you could answer that. I'm not sure there's much knowledge on interactions between different species, so I don't know how to answer whether they would be more friendly to different species rather than to the same species.
Yeah, it would be slightly difficult to answer this.
Yeah,
Yeah, they could be. I mean, with respect to humans, if I were to answer, then some packs, depending on how much exposure they have towards humans, they might be friendly slightly towards the human, not extremely friendly, but they might approach the individual or humans and then they would not harm it or try to bite it. But if another pack of otters is there in a different area and they have some worst experiences with the humans, then they tend to chase the humans as well. So with respect to families, two different families, it's a bit difficult to answer.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, Jules Greff has asked, do we have information about health issues, sickness of urban populations, or at least using urban industrial areas like ours in Singapore where the water quality is bad? That's a really good question. I'm not sure if any of our experts have information on that, but I know that um, they are obviously in Singapore and it's definitely around the world. There seems to be more sort of urbanized otters popping up. I know in Kuala Lumpur they've got fairly significant populations of smooth-coated otters, but actually, if they are being monitored for health issues and sickness, I don't actually know the answer to that one.
I think, Ben, I think for years, obviously in England, we had Vic Simpson, particularly, analysing all our sort of dead otters, whether they were found, either direct road casualties or if indeed they were persecuted or found, whatever was happening. And he was, I think, sadly, before he died, recording much higher levels of accumulated toxins in otters. And, one would sort of think, as the population has recovered in Britain, it's forcing them to have to live in more urban areas, and they're obviously going to be more subjected. I live on a very small river, just 6 kilometers, where we have a female otter and cubs. There's very little food. It's interesting what Andreas was saying. Bullhead is featuring very heavily in their diet. There's virtually no trout because of the bad water quality. So bullhead is very apparent. Crayfish is very apparent. We're doing a lot of water monitoring, and the toxicity of the river is of huge concern, but more so for E. coli and the problems that come to human health with E. coli. I would think that it's almost like an elephant in the room for if you've got declining water quality wherever you are in the world, otters are going to be at that top of that food pyramid. And at some stage, we could even be experiencing in Britain another major crash, that like we had with DDT and Dildrin and Eldrin and things back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I agree, Graham. And like you said, with the 60s and 70s, with the industrial chemicals that were in the water, we've maybe slightly moved away from them. But now, when I went to the WWF Belgium conference in Antwerp I think it was in March, and Anna Roos from Sweden gave a really interesting presentation on kind of the toxicology of dead otters that were being found in Sweden, and she kind of said that those previous industrial chemicals and pollutants were still partly present, but there was other things now appearing. And I'm sure it's the same in other countries, that we are certainly here in the UK well documented people talking about rivers, particularly unfortunately in England, that maybe people shouldn't swim in because they're not clean enough to swim in. So for things like otters, things like the fish, the birds that are very, very, very reliant on these habitats, that if we can't go for a swim for 10 minutes, then how are they going to feel, and how is it going to affect their long-term populations? We've got a statement, maybe a question. I'll just start reading it. Thank you all for your presentations. This is from Lottie. In the Netherlands, we have the big question of why the European otter is not spreading south. I wonder if you have any of you have advice for us on how we can find out besides just monitoring. Andreas, do you have any information on otters in the Netherlands and why they might not be heading further south from their current habitats?
The one thing is that you have to be a bit patient, probably, that it will happen, that they will have to find a way. The second is, but I have been in the Netherlands just this April, the very first time in my life, spending some days with Adi de Jong. And then the other thing is, of course, pollutants, which could be a hassle. And the third is is a flat country, and road mortality can also really be a problem if the population is spreading, and if you kill these first arrivals, then it takes some time. Then you must be even more patient.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I know, like I said, I was in Belgium, and one of their main issues, they probably don't have as many otters. Well, they definitely don't have as many otters as Belgium, but one of the issues they have is that their habitats are really fragmented. So it's really difficult, like you said, with roads and stuff, it's difficult for the otters to spread. And I think their long-term dream is to try and link all relevant otter habitats in some sort of way, so the fragmentation is reduced and eventually ended. So maybe something similar for relatively new populations in the Netherlands as well. Have we got any more questions from for our speakers or from our attendees? Just let me have a little look. I'll give them a couple more minutes. And in the meantime, just going to see. Nothing at the moment, so we'll give them a few more minutes. But in the meantime, I want to say a massive thank you to Ferdi, to Swanand, to Andreas, and to Graham for spending the morning of World Otter Day with us. Your presentations, videos offer different insights into something that we are all trying to do effectively the same thing. We're all working to have healthier otter populations, whether it be here in Scotland, whether it be Austria, in Greece/England in Graham's case, or India and Indonesia. We are all kind of here for the same reasons, and that is to hopefully have healthy, thriving otter populations moving forward, and hopefully healthier and more thriving as we go on. So a big thank you to you guys. We do have some more questions. One from Dennis for Graham. Graham has asked, do you know of any testing for human medical contraceptives in river quality water quality testings in the UK? Human contraceptives will end up in sewage.
Right.
In a river.
It's beginning to happen. We've been pushing for a whole range of chemicals, forever chemicals, and including estrogen and contraceptive things, which are definitely detectable in virtually every river in England. I rather fear that the Environment Agency are overwhelmed. They haven't got the capacity and the people to take this to the next level without increased funding. And you've seen in UK we've lost over 52% of staff from the Environment Agency with austerity cuts from the government. And unfortunately, the quality of monitoring and the feedback of research is just going not fast enough. There's all these citizen science projects going on all our rivers where we're providing data, we're providing trends and science, and it sort of ticks a box, but it doesn't give you any answers. And so the toxicology of those forever chemicals, there are people working, but it's literally one or two people within the whole of the Environment Agency on a national scale. And I don't know what's happening in Austria.
I don't know.
No, it's the same. Yeah.
Ferdi, we have a question for you. The individual has asked, with industrial development in developing nations like Indonesia, is there a potential of a chemical crash like happened in the UK and Europe in the 50s to 70s? Is that a concern?
Yeah, maybe for the several city in the Java and Sumatra, maybe perhaps if we ignore about them, maybe we can be like that.
Yeah, I agree. Ringa, you've asked everyone, but I'll be happy to answer this one myself. Recently, there's been a phenomenon in my country where people keep otters as pets. I'm not entirely sure which country you're from, but it is a growing concern. Even though it's a small trend on a very small scale, a couple of cases actually have gone viral on social media. Do you think it's a good or a bad thing? I'll be happy to answer that one in terms of it's definitely a bad thing. First and foremost, from a pure sort of individual level, we here in Skye, we have a rehab centre where we take in young otters or injured otters and try and get them back to the wild. The thought of having one of those as a pet is kind of incomprehensible to me in terms of they're very aggressive and they are very smelly. But purely on a conservation basis, no, it's definitely a bad thing because obviously most of these otters are taken from the wild. Most of the time it's Asian small-clawed otters, but there are other individual species such as smooth-coated otters that have been kind of caught up in it, Eurasian otters and hairy-nosed otters for that matter. Social media is kind of driving this. If you go onto popular social media platforms, mainly Instagram, and type in otters, you will find pet otters, probably more than you will find wild pictures or wild videos of otters, which is an alarming thing. For species that generally are having declining populations, 12 of the 13, well, 12 species are declining of the 14. The Mesoamerican otter has only recently been found, so it isn't actually documented whether the species is increasing or declining. This can only have a negative effect on otter populations. The Battersea Zoo in the UK actually did a really good study into not necessarily otters, but into exotic pets on social media and how you can stop people trying to see them. And they said that the best thing you can do is completely ignore the videos. If you comment on them or if you interact with them, whether it be an angry face or thumbs down or a comment saying this is really negative, it actually promotes the video. So the best thing you can do is actually just ignore it and move past, and hopefully in time, Facebook algorithms, Instagram algorithms, so TikTok algorithms as well, will stop people seeing this thing. So to answer your question, it's definitely a bad thing. These are amazing animals. All 14 species now are amazing animals, and we should really conserve and love and do what we can to help them in the wild, as the amazing Andreas, Graham, Swanand, Ferdi are doing. So yeah, definitely a bad thing. I think that's all the questions we have today. I would like to say again, without repeating myself, a massive thank you to our four amazing speakers, Andreas, Graham, Swanand, Ferdi. We really appreciate your time this morning. Swanand and Ferdi, I know you're probably coming to the end of your World Otter Days, so we hope you enjoy your evening and afternoon. Graham and Andreas, you're still very much in the middle of it, so we hope you enjoy the rest of your World Otter Day. For those that are joining us, joining myself and Trevor McIntyre, Issa Dowd, Marcelo Augusto and Gonzalo Medina Vogel later on this evening. I look forward to seeing you all again. For those that maybe can't or have chosen not to join us this evening, I want to say a massive thank you to you, and I hope you have a wonderful World Otter Day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, and thank you for caring about otters.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Ciao.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
We'll see you later
Bye-bye.
on. Thank
See you
you.
See you
later.
later.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
thanks,
you.
man.